Give me your craziest portal NIL story, the one that's made you think to yourself, man, we got to reset this whole system.
Man, I wish I could give you one story, but there's so many that happen that it creates this like chaotic atmosphere. And the biggest thing for me is like we not only do it once in December, right? You do it all over again in the spring.
Yeah.
Like you're recruiting and retaining a bunch of players that technically may never play a true snap for you come the end of August.
Yeah.
And I think for me, where it drives me crazy, and this is a story that I'll tell the college sports fan base that it does give you a little bit of what's right in college sports, but it also gives you a little bit of what's wrong, right? So right now, obviously, there's agents flowing throughout the game. And throughout the recruiting process, pretty much what happens is you're getting phone calls all day long, starting probably October 1st, that are, hey, I have this player. Hey, I have this player, and would Louisville take him for X amount of dollars? He's willing to leave X school for X amount of dollars. Well, you're getting those calls, and you're getting 3 or 4 guys who all say they have the same player. So like you're trying to smooth out, okay, which one of these 4 guys actually represents this guy because we really want him. And this is the value that we're willing to pay for him. So you're constantly having conversations with agents or I use the word agent probably lighter than I should. It's agents and runners now in college sports because a lot of these guys are not qualified to actually go represent players at a high level, which makes this really difficult on team and athletic administrative staff, right? Because you may be negotiating with somebody who's never actually spoken to the player and they just keep telling you, we got this guy, we got this guy. Well, we can't speak to him until he hits the portal. Yeah. So it makes it for a really tough environment.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think this is an important point. Those agents, and the reason that a fan may say, well, why does a player have 4 different agents per se? Well, what's happening probably is that these managers or runners or agents are trying to get an offer from Louisville to then go to the athlete or someone they know who knows the athlete and says, hey, we have an offer for $500,000 from Louisville, but we get 20% of it for brokering the deal. And then they'll go take that offer to the athlete, right? So you think there's a lot of these agents who are running around trying to get deals to present to athletes without even knowing if the athlete's actually interested in leaving and going to Louisville.
Yeah, and there are a lot of really good agents out there that I love working with, have had great experiences with, but there's also a lot of really bad ones. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're actually going and getting a deal for, let's just say, $400,000, and they're subtracting the 20% and giving the kid the number minus the 20% because they're just taking their deal off top. Hey, I got you. Let's just use round numbers. Hey, I got you a deal for 300. Well, anything on top of that, the agents put in their pocket, right? So there's a lot of that happening around college football right now. But one of the things that drives me crazy is because there's not a ton of I guess you'd say regulation around who is and who isn't an agent in college sports because there is no agent registry. There's no fee. There's no requirements. You don't have to have a master's degree like you do in the NBA or NFL. Oftentimes you get a lot of people who are underqualified to talk about the numbers when you're negotiating some of these deals, right? These are well into the 6 figures, a lot of these deals. So you may be dealing with a mom. Maybe dealing with an uncle, an aunt, a cousin. Sometimes you're just literally dealing with a roommate at another school, which is insane, right? So you're trying to continue to navigate those waters. But, one of the craziest things I've dealt with to this point is we had a group of guys come in the winter portal of last year. And from the jump, dude, like they were marketing. They were trying to go somewhere else. They were literally there for – They were at Louisville for like, give me 10 days before we started getting phone calls from other agents and other schools. Hey, this guy's they're shopping this guy, right? This guy's shopping the guy, this guy. And basically it was just leveraging the kid being on campus with us to go somewhere in the SEC or transfer somewhere else in the conference, right? And it literally was there was no intention of ever playing it down for Louisville football. They're coming here because they're going to collect some cash from somebody for the most amount of cash they could for the first few months of the year. And then once that spring portal hit, man, they were going to go catch the next biggest bag down the road from somebody else, whether it was in a conference or not. Like that kind of thing is happening in college sports. I'm hoping that a lot of that gets cleaned up in the next phase of the House versus NCAA settlement. And as some of these transfer rules, they put some guardrails around them. But man, it is really tough to operate from I guess you call it a front office standpoint, right? Like, how do you know what you're even going to have come August 1 for camp if there's a portal in December and you put a team together and you start planning, you train all these guys going into the spring, and then boom, portal hits in the spring. And if you're not willing to up the offer or willing to, overpay, then you might get beat and lose.
Having two transfer portal windows creates just so much misalignment too with the coaching staff, and in spring practice actually having true position battles and actually naming starters and actually being able to build a roster. I mean, think about if you're a head coach and you know that you have a transfer portal window after spring ball, like, why even have spring practice? You don't even know who your team's going to be. You may lose 20 of your guys. And think about a head coach. Like, if you have a big time quarterback battle, are you going to name your starter in the spring and then risk that the backup transfers right after spring practice? No, you're going to wait till the last possible minute. So it almost puts coaches in the situation where they have to be unintentionally dishonest because they're trying to protect the team. They got to do what's best for the team at the end of the day. So I think having two windows, and I do think there's a lot of consensus in college sports, college football, about having one transfer portal window. Is there any traction on that you know about?
Yeah, it sounds like it's moving that direction. It couldn't come soon enough. I think that's what's best for the players as well. Like, I actually like the designated student athlete concept that they put together this year, having a list of guys on each roster that, hey, if that guy needs to transfer, more power to them. Would love to see them go play down a level because they're not going to play here at Louisville. I like that concept of having a list of guys that are, hey, maybe after that spring portal, they are free agents and they are available to move. The issue with having the two portals is that the guys on the roster don't want to deal with it either. Like, the guys all those guys came to a certain school to go try and win a championship. They don't want to not know what their team looks like 3 months before opening night, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody keeps saying, oh, well, it's best for the athlete. It's best for the athlete. Well, maybe in like a very small bubble, but for the most part, these athletes aren't dumb, man. Like, these guys are the game has evolved. Like, athletes have representation. Athletes are studying what's best for them. They listen to their friends who have gone on to the NBA and the NFL. Like, it's pretty straightforward. And the athletes, I think at this point, are trying to put some guardrails around this thing to say, hey, man, I don't want my wide receiver, from a quarterback standpoint, I don't want my wide receiver leaving at, the first week in May. And then, we got to go fill it. And I don't have a relationship with this guy come opening night. Like, it creates a really difficult environment that, to be honest, that's not what college sports is about. And we talk about, like, money creating issues like that would be more of an issue to me than the increased earnings. Like, if you're making a commitment to a team, to a program, you ride it out for the course of the year. That's why we don't have you don't have free agency windows in the middle of the NFL season, right? And then it also creates a really difficult concept when we get to the end of the season and there's bowl games coming up. I just saw your content with Bo Perbula, right? Like, those are really tough conversations that happen relatively early in the season, right? They're happening as the season goes on at a lot of places. And for a guy to have to make a change while a team's running through the college football playoff is a really tough situation. And I hope some of those things get cleaned up. And hopefully the College Sports Commission will be part of that resolution.
Take me through, by position group in college football, a range of what the top players at those positions are making in total compensation by NIL collective and or the school with revenue sharing.
That's a great question. I mean, across the board, it's so crazy because it all depends on the school and the conference, right? And it depends on the individual athlete. I think if you're looking at, quarterbacks here north of, the real dudes, like the guys who are starting and they're they are defined starters, you're looking at a couple $1 million. The offensive line has skyrocketed like crazy. And if your school's going to go really heavy, you could be looking at $500,000 plus on some of those guys. But realistically, the schools who have a really nice plan try to keep those numbers down so that they can create parity across their roster. and take care of the guys that they need to take care of, and make sure that there's not just depth, but consistency in the roster. Receivers, the high end guys, you know how it is. It's just like the NFL. Like there's a ton of capacity for guys to make over seven figures, but there's also those guys who are role players and depth guys making low six figures. And then there's guys who are developmental guys that are making, below 100,000. So I always try and look at it, kind of in four categories, right? You have your starters, your key backups, depth guys, and developmental guys. You got your four buckets. And those range based on the school that you're at. But I would say at that top level, those guys who are starters are making legit six-figure money. You've got your key backups who also are probably making right around six figures, if not a little bit over 100. Then you have your developmental guys and your those guys who aren't going to play. And a lot of schools have taken the approach where they're going to pay everybody. Like there's, hey, we're going to pay 80 guys. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that. I think that the guys who are outperforming, the guys who are playing, the guys who do the right things and compete every day do have the right to earn more. Just like the NFL pays, the top stars the money that makes sense. So we take the approach of paying less guys, but we pay the guys that produce, and we're upfront about that with everybody we bring in here.
Yeah. The schools that pay guys a bunch when they first get there out of in recruiting, it creates an issue because you have guys coming to the locker room that may be making $300,000 that haven't played a down.
Yes.
And then you have your veteran receiver who wasn't great out of high school, but maybe he's become a really good player and an important player, and he's making $100,000, and he now hears the new guy's making 300. Well, he calls someone like you up right away and says, "Hey, the new guy's making 300. I'm the starter. I should be making 350."
Yeah, and that's typically why guys leave in the spring. They feel unhappy. Yeah. They feel like they're they feel like they got taken advantage of a little bit because they were loyal. And look, we tell a lot of guys, and in the market, you can make 60-70% more going somewhere else. There's no doubt. Yeah. But what a lot of guys don't take into account is the investment into your development, the investment into the consistency in your career, and the investment in being in a system that knows you and a system that you know. Because if you leave somewhere and you go in the spring, you better make sure you catch that playbook like that, or you're not going to play in the fall, right? So it could derail a career, it could derail your progression. And a lot of people, they lose sight of the fact that when you come in somewhere as a freshman, and you have the same strength coach, the same routine, the same progression throughout the course of a year, that's what gets you bigger and stronger, not going and starting a new program over every 9 months. So the development piece often gets lost in the shuffle. But, I think we've done a great job of making sure our returners understand that we're keeping our roster pretty level across the board. And if you're going to bring a dude in, I don't care what program, I don't care what coach you are, if you are going to bring a dude in that's getting paid more than everybody else, they better be a dog. Like they better come in, do the right things, make sure that they're the same guy every day, because you may sniff it out as a coach over time, or you may sniff it out as a GM over time, but the dudes who sniff it out right away are the guys in the locker next to them. And that stuff unravels a locker room fast. And ultimately in college football, at the end of the day, if you've got older guys that perform and they perform as a unit, you can win a lot of football games, especially in the ACC as this thing continues to change. There's big time opportunity to win games if you play as a unit.